Welcome everybody, and today I'm going to give you 5 tips to improve your wildlife photography if you're using a beanbag. Now, I am a massive fan of beanbags, have been for a long time. I think they give fantastic support for cameras and they can be quite flexible as well. And personally, if I have the option, I would rather use a beanbag to support my camera and lens than a tripod. So tip number 1 is the kind of beanbag that you're using. You can see I've got one here specifically. Now, really anything where you can just put some filling in it and it's going to mold to the camera and going to be stable for you is going to do the job. But I would seriously advise, if you haven't looked at one already, if you haven't got one of these, I would seriously advise looking at this, which is a double beanbag. So you can see how it's designed here. It's kind of looks like it's in 2 halves. It's all in one, but it's the way it's designed. Originally, I think it was just designed to put onto car doors. So this is perfect for photographing out of the car. You get the window down and then you put this over the windowsill, and it's just a fantastic stable support for a camera and a big lens. Now, it's not just for cars, they're really useful for other things as well. So I think the way it's designed here, so you've got kind of this middle bit, it kind of traps itself a little bit better. So you could use this on gates, you could put it on a fence post, and of course you can use it straight on the ground. Now, what should you put in your beanbag? What should you use as filling? And there's a number of options. Well, basically you want to have it nice and solid, but you want it to sort of be able to mold to the camera and the lens when you put it on top. So there's different things you can use. So you could use rice, you could use maybe plastic beads, maybe like polystyrene beads. You could even use something like lentils, or you could even use birdseed. I know a few people have used birdseed in the beanbags. Now, if you use a lighter option, the advantage of that is going to be less weight for you to carry around, but the downside is I just don't think it gives you as much stability. The opposite of that, if you use a much heavier filling like rice, tends to be heavier, then I think that just gives you greater stability, but it's more weight for you to carry around. So you need to decide what you think is going to be the best option for you. Now, personally, I've used rice for a long time. I love using rice in my beanbags. I find that it gives really good stability for the camera and the lens, and it also enables me to kind of mold it into place. So I really like using rice. I have played around in the past to keep the weight down, so I've tried a mixture, which is something you could do. You could try a bit of a mixture. So for example, you could use part rice and then maybe part something else. I've used sawdust as well in the past. You know, that keeps the weight down. Now, when you fill it up, what I would say is you want to sort of get the right amount. So you want to make sure there's enough in there, which should be fairly obvious, but you don't want too much that it doesn't give. So you want to try and just leave like a little bit of space. In there, and then you should find that it just has the right amount of give but still really good solidity. The next tip is to have a beanbag with a strap, and this is just making it so much easier to carry around. So if you get one with a strap like this across your body, beanbag down by your hip, and it's just so much better. And of course, not just being more comfortable, but also means that you've got both hands free as opposed to having to carry it in one of your hands. So if you can get one of these, particularly with like a really thick strap here, makes it more comfortable, then these are really excellent. I can also unclip this strap as well, so I can carry it around, but if I want to take it off because it gets in the way, which I sometimes do, I can unclip it, I can put that out of the way, and I just got the beanbag. Tip number 4 is about technique. So when you've got the camera and lens on the beanbag, it should be nice and stable, but there's a few things you can do just to improve the sharpness of your images, particularly if you're using a big lens. So the first thing, when I put the lens onto the camera, I'll kind of rest it round about here. And then I'll push it down. I'll kind of push it down and jiggle it a little bit. It's going to move the filling, help it mold into shape and make it really stable. Now, after that, there's 3 things I do. So the first one is I'm going to continue to apply a bit of pressure. So I'm going to slightly push down with my left hand, again pushing the lens into the beanbag, and then I'm going to put my eye to the viewfinder, and I'm very slightly going to push my eye into the viewfinder. And then the third thing I do is with my shutter hand, I kind of pull down slightly. Okay, so very slightly, and I think that helps to improve stability. So I've got three things. I've got my left hand pushing down, I've got my eye slightly pushing up towards the viewfinder, and I've got this right hand slightly pulling down. And all those three contact points really help to improve stability when you're using a beanbag like this. And it's really surprising actually, if you use this technique and you become very good at it, it's really surprising what slow shutter speed you can actually get down to and get sharp images as long as the subject stays still. Now, what about the lens collar? What should we do with that when we're using a beanbag? Now, I don't think it makes much point to leave it in the same position as if you were using a tripod underneath the lens, because then you'd have to kind of try and push that into the beanbag, and that just seems to defeat the whole point of a beanbag to me. So what I would do is simply put it up here out of the way. You can then get your hand underneath, and we talked about pressing down. That's nice and comfortable to do that. The other option, which I sometimes do, is you could actually bring it down here. So I could unscrew it and actually bring the collar and kind of have this bit down here. Now potentially that could act as another little bit of support as well, kind of pushing into the beanbag. So whether you're doing it horizontally like this, or if it was vertical, you know, it doesn't matter. You can just unloosen it, pull it down and do it that way. And the last tip is to do with autofocus, and sometimes using a camera on a beanbag with a long lens can actually affect your focus. Now the reason for this is it's to do with the manual focus ring. So almost all lenses, I think, certainly the majority of lenses, are going to have a manual focus ring on there somewhere. Now sometimes what happens is when you put this big lens onto the beanbag, when you actually move the camera, you'll find that the manual focus ring can actually sort of grip onto the beanbag and it can actually move. If you see here, I'm moving the camera and I can see it, look, gripping that manual focus ring, and it's actually changing the focus. Now, you're probably going to be using autofocus, but even so, there's a chance maybe as you're firing the shutter in between frames that movement will just change the focus and it'll be totally off. So just be aware of this. It is a possible problem at times. Now, is there any way really around this? I don't think there's many ways around it if you have this problem. One thing you could try and do is just to add a bit of tape. I have done this in the past. You could get a little bit of gaffer tape and actually tape the manual focus ring to the body, and then hopefully it's not going to move, hopefully it's not going to catch in the same way. Now I have done this, I think I've had some success with this, but I wouldn't say it's 100% foolproof by any means, but I definitely think it helps. You're probably going to be okay if you're photographing something static. So if you're keeping everything in the same place, maybe you're moving your focus point around to change the composition, you're probably going to be okay. The problem's going to arise is if you're tracking anything. So if you're trying to track a subject that's moving with a camera on a beanbag like this, and that's potentially when you're going to get that problem. So in that situation, I think if you're expecting to be tracking something, you know, that's the plan, you're pretty sure, then I would try not to use a beanbag for it. I would try and opt for some kind of support, such as a usual tripod with a gimbal, maybe a ball head on top, or if you're on the ground, some kind of ground pod. So something that allows you to track freely and you don't get that problem. So do you use a beanbag? What type of beanbag do you use? What do you fill the beanbag with? I'd be interested to know that. Is there any particular subjects in terms of wildlife photography that you tend to use a beanbag for photographing? Let me know in the comments box below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.